I'm Frank Drouillard. I'm running for Board of Supervisors District 4. I realize this is District 1, so I'm going to talk just a little bit about what I'm going to run on, but then I want to talk about the importance of voting for our central committee candidates. Okay, so my big issue are the homelessness, housing, and crime. Okay, and I'm also really big on election integrity. I happen to be the chair of the Marin Election Integrity Committee, and we have a problem here in this county. There are problems with our elections department. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds there, but as far as housing, I'm adamantly opposed to these big box housing projects that are being imposed by Sacramento. They're incompatible with Marin County. They remove local control, and I think there are much better ways to do it. We can relax some zoning requirements. We can relax all these permit fees that contractors are exposed to that increase the costs of building a home and meeting the needs of people, and there's a lot of streamlining that can be done. We can act to keep more of our planning officials. Because it's so expensive to live here in the county, we get these young planning officials. They start working, realizing they can't afford to live here, and they leave. So these developers are going through 1, 2, 3 planning people for their project, and it drives up their initial costs. So we need to try to stop that, smooth that out. It's not going to happen overnight. It took 40 years to create the housing problem here in Marin County. They've been an anti-growth county for a long time. It's going to take a little bit of time to turn the ship around. As far as homelessness, I know just driving here, I saw all the encampments along Anderson. That is shameful. That is not compassionate at all. This county has a history of just offering all carrot and no stick. And we have to start addressing the root cause of homelessness, and it's not because they can't afford a home. They're drug addicts, they're alcoholics, or they have mental health issues, often induced by alcoholism or drug abuse. We have to start requiring that they get treatment before they get assistance. I want to model what they've done in San Antonio, Texas. It's been very successful. They have something called the Haven for Hope. It's a transitional campus. It's funded by philanthropists, and it's staffed by volunteers, and then NGOs gather there as well to provide their silo services. They try to get them all together. So people that need to have a job or job training, like the veterans, it's available there. They have separate housing for families with children, men and women. That's a big deal. They've actually been able to whittle down their homeless problem, and they aren't spending nearly as much money as we in Marin County and California spend on the homeless problem, and it keeps growing. So another issue of mine is crime. I'm very worried about Marin County becoming like what I see in San Francisco. All these drug addicts running everywhere. They've got to support their habit, and they steal. They steal from the retail centers. That's going to ruin our tax base here, retail tax base in Marin County. Aaron's going to talk a little bit more about that. And again, the other thing I mentioned on election integrity, I think the most important thing that we can do in this county to turn things around is to support election integrity. And the way to do that is to replace the Marin GOP. That's why we see 3 candidates here tonight that are running for seats. There's 4 seats available in District 1, and you need to vote for them. It's Mark and Mary and Eric. Can you stand up so people can see you? All right. So these are what we call America First candidates. We are trying to fight the regime that's been in place for at least 2.5 decades. They started with about 36% registrations, Republican registrations in the county. They've driven it down to about 12%. They throw conservatives off the committee, including me, over spurious reasons. They fail to find and support good candidates for office, and they haven't gotten anybody elected in Marin County that's a Republican for a couple decades. One exception, maybe this guy that's a sewer district over in Hamilton. That's about it. But their success is absolutely awful, and it's because they're embracing basically a Democrat platform, Republican light. They're giving up the basic conservative platform. These are the same people that supported the top 2 system in 2010. That's killing the GOP in California. Now they're pretending that they oppose it, but no, they were the ones that were promoting it in this county. They wanted to make a big deal about being the first Republican Central Committee that supported gay marriage. I don't care where you stand on gay marriage, but that single act turned a lot of people off, conservatives off in this party. They don't want anything to do with it. It's just, it's not conservative values. I can give you several other examples of things that they're doing that are contrary to the goals of Republicans in this county, including they supported a Democrat candidate for assembly in 2012 that didn't even live in this county. She lived in San Francisco. Connie Wong is her name. They gave her $14,500, and we're limping along. That committee has at best $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 in its bank account. I mean, no one's donating to them anymore because they don't trust them. So the point is, we need to reinvigorate the party, the local GOP, and these are the people that can do it. I mean, they are on our America First slate, and that's our main goal, is to reinvigorate the party. That's why we're out canvassing neighborhoods, talking to people. They send out a fancy flyer that's supported by the Briones Society in San Francisco. If you don't know who they are, look them up. Briones, Briones Society. They are a far left Republican group from San Francisco. They're trying to take over Marin County. They are spending tens of thousands of dollars to support these current candidates, or current people in control of the Marin GOP. They want to keep them here in place. So with that, I think I've covered a lot of bases. Yes, sir.
Do they have elections? How do they stay in power? I know some of them, and I would agree. I played piano for a couple of the things. I say they really are the country club Republican.
Yes, they're the Good Old Boys Network.
Yes.
For years and years, they haven't had a full committee. The only reason we're having an election this year, while we're seeing people on the ballot, is we have more people running than seats available. So they have to have an election. The last time they had an election that I'm aware of was, I think, maybe 2012 for District 1. There's 5 districts in the county. And before that, it was 2006. I think it was District 2. They changed the districts in this time, but they very rarely have, you'll see an election for Central Committee seats because they're all appointed. So like myself, a lot of people that are here that are currently on the committee or were on the committee, we were appointed. There was an empty seat. We heard about the Marin GOP after the 2020 election. We all wanted to do something about election integrity. We heard about this Marin GOP for the first time, approached them, got appointed. And I know that's how I was put on, that's how Walter was put on, John.
And so they can kick you off.
Yes, and they do it with spurious reasons. Like for me and another fellow, we ended up, we discovered some fraud by the current chair that occurred back in 2017. So we asked him to explain it. We've been trying to resolve it within the committee for over a year. And they keep blowing us off, throwing us off, picking us off one by one. Well, in September, we sued them. We took them to small claims court. Oh. So immediately, 2 of us that were still on the committee, they suspended us. They didn't follow the bylaws to suspend us. They just declared, you're suspended. Okay, that was September. The following, that was in October. The following month, they threw us off in a secret session. There's no record of the charges against us. There's no record of the evidence that they have against us. There's no record of our defense. And there's no record of the vote to kick us off. It's like it didn't happen. They don't want people to know what they're doing. They don't want you to know how they roll. So all of us have committed that through America First, we want to be transparent. We want to be fair. We want to allow people, conservatives, to contribute to meetings. Right now, as members, we can't raise new business. They shut us down. One fellow that was kicked off in November, along with me, they have tried to arrest him 4 times for raising a point of order. They called the police, the San Rafael police. Finally, John, they were saying, you have to leave or we're calling the police on you. John said, go ahead, do it. The cops show up and they say, John said, well, I'll do what you want me to do, but do I have to leave? They said, well, no, not really. This is a public space. So they lied to us. They told us that the police would arrest us, which was completely untrue. So they started, as a result of John, saying, okay, we can go to these meetings, you can't throw us out. They moved to Zoom. And they don't let anybody participate but the members. So they're really tightening down. They don't want people to know what they're doing. And I think they've got something to hide. They're acting exactly like they have something to hide. We want to end that. It's killing contributions to the committee.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, other people have questions. So if we want to donate, can we donate to you guys? No.
I would recommend for the Marin GOP, for the Cal GOP, and the RNC, do not donate to those organizations.
Right.
Donate directly to candidates that you like.
Yeah.
Or the
Okay.
MEIC.
Or the MEIC, yes, I've got cards here if you want. So what we do, just a little bit about the Marin Election Integrity Committee, we observe elections. We record what they're doing, and then we analyze the results. We did that for the 2020 election. A couple of our key findings are that they did not count nearly 8,000 ballots for the certified amount. And this is based on their numbers.
Republican ballots, they did not count 8,000 Republican ballots.
Well, very likely, we suspect that they were live ballots, in-person ballots on election day. Those tend to be Republicans.
Yes.
Okay, so they didn't include those in the certified total. They've lied to, we've asked them to explain that, and they've given us at least 2 or 3 stories. Now it's to the point they know that we know they're lying to us. So they won't, they say, well, we can't talk about that. And there are some other anomalies that they can't explain. And, I'll briefly describe one. This is sometimes confusing. If you look at Sonoma County and Marin County, we see evidence of some invisible hand that's controlling the elections. And how I can say that is if you just look at Democrats, because they dominate both Sonoma County and Marin County. So if you just look at Democrats for all the elections back to 2010, at least 2010. It doesn't matter if it's Congress, for Senate, for governor, AG, it doesn't matter. You look at all of those races, Sonoma County always provides 60% of the Democrat votes, and Marin provides 40% of the Democrat votes. It's an unrealistic statistic. It doesn't matter who's running. It doesn't matter how many people vote. You have fewer people vote in the midterm than you do the general. And there's absolutely no explanation for that. And I'm talking about to the 10th or 100th of a percent. It's 40, 60 all the time. There was one deviation to that, and it was when Sonoma County had a huge voter turnout. Marin couldn't keep up. So with that one, Sonoma provided 62, Marin provided 68. But we see that it was an unusual turnout for Sonoma County. I'll give you one more. We found that there's a huge gap between the number of Democrats that are registered in the state. It started at about 47% in 1960, and 54%, and now it's about 45%. But up in 1960, the votes that they earned was always less than their registration. So they had about 54% registration, and they get 45 to 50% of the vote. That curve inverted about 1996. They started getting more votes than they had Democrats registered. And now they get 60% of the votes, but they've only got 45% of the registrations. That's a 22-point difference. We wondered, where does that come from? Well, we found out where it comes from. It's NPP, no party preference. It's the people that tend not to vote. They're voting for them. And it's almost a perfect match. The growth of NPP matches the growth of that difference between registrations and then the votes they capture. And how this manifests itself, we'll talk about the 2020 election with Joe Biden. Joe Biden got 128,000 votes in Marin County, but only 93,000 Democrats voted. That means he had to get 35,000 votes from somewhere else. Now, if you assume that all Democrats voted for Biden and all Republicans did not, they voted for Trump, then you wonder, okay, who's left to provide that 35,000 votes? As we call it other. We lump all the other parties together. And it turns out they had to vote for Biden at a 90% rate, higher than they had to have a higher turnout of that segment of the voters than the Democrats. It's just not realistic that many of the NPP, because all people that are Democrats are already registered Democrat. Who's in the NPP are people that tend not to vote. They go get registered, or they go get their driver's license. They ask them what party you are. They go, I don't know, so they make them NPP. and or they're Republicans in hiding. There are a lot of Republicans in hiding in this county. They don't want to admit. They'll lose their job, they'll lose their clients, so they left the party and they register NPP. But anyway, that's a huge pool of voters. That it's bigger than the Republicans, and they use that. They're flipping votes or voting for them, and they can do that electronically. We have a pretty good idea how they're doing it, but we can't prove it. We can't make a court case out of it. We don't have subpoena power. We just look at results and say, that doesn't look right. Can you explain it? And they just blow us off. No one cares. So, but that's going to change after this election. There's a new effort starting in Orange County. It's a group called Patriot Force. What they're doing, they're looking at the National Change of Address form that's maintained, and they can use that database to find people that should not be on the voter rolls. So the goal is to get these voter rolls cleaned up before November. Because right now, the way we do it, Marin Election Integrity, we look at an election, we look at the results and say, hey, this doesn't look right. There's no way we can change an election after the fact. But if we can get people off the rolls that shouldn't be on the rolls before the election, we can have some positive results, and it's all actionable in court. We can take them to court over this. And so that's what that effort is going to start shortly after this primary. So if you're interested in election integrity, that's going to be our next focus, where we are going to get lists of people at an address. Say there's, yes, sir.
Just please clarify how it makes actionable. So,
Because if they put people on the voter roll that should not be on the voter roll, that's a felony. We can go to the Register of Voters and say, if you mail these people a ballot, you just committed a felony. We're taking you to court, or we're going to have you prosecuted. So that's the big difference. It's a specific, or there are several specific laws that are broken. So we can prove that. We can't prove that they manipulated the results. It's just, they're too sophisticated at doing it. And we just, yes, Tom?
Would you hand it over to the DA, or would you go on as pro se?
The recommendation is to first go to the ROV and tell her, don't mail these ballots. If she says, blows us off, then we go to the Board of Supervisors and say, you have a problem with your ROV. If they blow us off, then we go to the sheriff and say, look, we have evidence of a potential felony being committed. And if he blows us off, then we go to a group that's called the Constitutional Sheriffs. It's other sheriffs and police chiefs that will come and visit him and remind him of his constitutional authority to uphold the Constitution. And they're apparently very good at convincing these skeptical sheriffs to act. So that's the battle plan. And then I think as a last resort, as a citizen, we all have standing to make sure that our voter rolls are clean, because it affects our lives. The elections affect our lives. I think we could take action. So, but we want to go through the normal channels to the extent possible. Now, what they're trying to do is they're using this primary as a test case, just to see, test some of their analyses out. So they do have people, what they do is they give us a list and say, these are some suspect people on the voter rolls. We need some foot soldiers to go to that address and ask them, how many people live here? Or is there even a house there? Is there a residence there? And if there's not, we file an affidavit and we compile all of that stuff. They are coordinating this effort with at least 28 different counties. It might be as many as 35 now. So it's largely a statewide effort where they are going to gather data, start looking for patterns, and then approach law enforcement officials and say, hey, you've got to clean this up. It looks very promising, but it's going to take a lot of work. We literally need foot soldiers to go. I mean, for example, we'll get a list of 100 addresses, and we need people to go to those addresses and ask questions. If people tell us, no, there's not 13 people here, there's only 2 of us, we need to know that. And we try to get them to fill out an affidavit, or we take notes and we sign an affidavit. But we're collecting data to show that these voters are bad. Now, a few of us, a month or so ago, had an opportunity to see a presentation of this, the type of data that they're using. Larry Maloney's, you remember that? He just looked at the Marin County voter rolls, And he has access to the obituaries, the national change of address. So he'll say, okay, I want to look at people over 80 years old. It's like, oh, okay, this one died. Let's see if they voted. In his demonstration, we saw, maybe 4 people that were dead that have been voting for the last 10 or 15 years. That's the kind of stuff we can take to Linda Roberts and say, you got to get them off the voter roll. You can leave them on the roll. You can't send them a ballot. That's another thing to keep in mind. When you die, you don't come off the voter roll. You're canceled. You stay on the voter roll. You're just canceled. If you stop voting for 2 elections, you are inactive, but you're still there. And if you're under 18, you are preliminary voter. So they have active, inactive, canceled, and preliminary voters on these voter rolls. And we suspect that there are 2 voter rolls, by the way. One they show us publicly, and another one that they really use.